Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now September 2nd of 2023. We are getting closer to the D23 event, which is going to hold a couple of announcements. But what's even all the more important is what Disney is preparing for their first earnings call of 2024 that for surely is going to put them out of business eventually. This whole deal, this whole plan that they have in the works that we're going to be talking about today, for sure is going to really drive a lot of core audience members away, as well as casual audience members. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new, and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into the subject, shall we? Now, we already discussed about how Bob Iger and the board are trying to find a way to keep Disney afloat, and how, regardless of their situation, they are still doubling down on the whole DEI nonsense and throwing it into their projects. Well, if you thought it was bad now, it's about to get a whole lot worse for 2024 and beyond. Let's really dive into the details here and exactly what's about to be unveiled next year by Iger himself to share with the shareholders and to the general public. So, interestingly enough, we know that a couple of the top two shareholders, I always like to bring up BlackRock and Vanguard. You gotta remember Larry Fink about what he said about how you have to force change and all of this crazy stuff, and they really are major players in funding Disney with all of this nonsense. Disney really, I feel, is irredeemable. You really can't fix them. Even if you got rid of Iger, even if you replace the board or at least some members of the board, you still have these two top shareholders, as an example, in the background, really kind of being the puppeteers. Now, moving onwards, with Disney doubling down with their DEI agenda for all upcoming live-action remakes, one major development is one of the worst updates of all in Disney history that is moving forward due to Bob Iger. Iger, of course, is planning to make an announcement during its first earnings call of next year that they actually will be creating a complete reimagining of original animated films, such as The Sword and the Stone, The Black Cauldron, and a Sleeping Beauty remake that will be considered the most diverse film yet and will explore different iterations of all these characters. But it doesn't stop there. Disney is also looking into rebooting many of their already made live-action iterations, such as The Beauty and the Beast, to provide a retelling of that story that they created a couple of years ago, to make the story more diverse and focus on equality as well, to ditch the source material of the original animated feature and live-action film that they had made. Bob Iger and the board decided that they plan to reboot many of the past live-action creations. This will also involve a full-on reboot of 2015's Cinderella as well. Disney is in a position right now where they feel the only films that will garner any kind of significant revenue are different versions or iterations of the animated classics to sell to their audience. Now guys, let me stop here because there is more to discuss. I just want to say one thing and offer you my 2 cents on this before I get to the next big important development about this, is that the thing about this that really caught me off guard is the fact that not only are they going back to animated films and doing new live-action iterations of those, but they're also going back to a lot of their already made live-action films and rebooting or remaking those. Similar to what we talked about with what's happening with the Snow White movie. Now, there was a sequel in the works that got cancelled for Rachel Zegler's film, and they're already embracing doing another remake, another reimagining of Snow White that'll be more catered to the source material to kind of dial back on this disaster, but it will still embrace their DEI agenda. Now, this is where it gets even worse, because you guys may very well recall there's quite a number of Disney live-action remakes that you may have forgotten about, and one of which I think is going to be the biggest one of all that could very well fail hard at the box office if they really do go this route. So let's get into this. Now, not only will Cinderella be retold, and Sleeping Beauty from rebooting the Maleficent movies, a third one is pretty much off the table right now. They don't want to move forward with that. Angelina Jolie's not getting a role or a deal with them. So this is where things begin to unravel, and not in the good sense, because this is where they're going back to more live-action iterations. that the Walt Disney Company already embraced. So let's get into this further. So most of the board feels that this is the correct path to go, and there's no doubt that BlackRock and Vanguard planned a significant role in this decision that will be announced within the first quarter of next year. A full-on reboot, are you ready? Of Alice in Wonderland from 2010 will also be put into the equation of the plan to do a retelling of that live-action classic. An announcement for an Alice in Wonderland remake will also be presented within this earnings call that will embrace diversity and ditching the source material to pursue new stories and tales to tell, where also it will be a reimagining, but also very familiar to their core audience. This was all a plan by Bob Iger, and that got approved by the board members. Now, here's the problem. What they're doing is that, like I said before, they feel that their live-action remakes are going to be big-time sellers because it's going to be a new tale, it's going to be a new story, but it's going to be yet also familiar. Now, what do they think is familiar? Well, what they're doing is that they're stealing the title, slapping it on some unrecognized story that makes no sense, and they're inserting characters' names in there. That's basically what it equals to. It's like what they did with Snow White, right? The Snow White that we have in the upcoming film is not the real Snow White. The Seven Dwarves are not the Seven Dwarves, they are the magical creatures. They're going to be applying the same exact effect to Cinderella, to Alice in Wonderland, to Beauty and the Beast. The fact that they're going back to those three major live-action remakes and rebooting them along with Sleeping Beauty and disregarding the two Maleficent films is ludicrous. And we're going to be finding out a lot more about this throughout the remainder of this year, so stay tuned. But ahead of that 2024 earnings call, so I think that Bob Iger is just either purposely doing this, or he's just so out of touch with reality that he is definitely the worst CEO of all time. I think that he really dethroned Bob Chapek as the worst leader of Disney, essentially. And we all know what Chapek did with the parks. We're all very well aware about that. He at least tried to dial back on the wokeism in many of the movies, and that was put to a halt early on by the board. Bob Iger is nobody to look up to, alright? Nobody should ever look up to this guy as an idol or an icon. This guy is a liar, and what he says in all those earnings calls about how they are fully confident within Disney in the long term, that, you know, the stocks going down are of no concern, or anything about them losing Disney Plus are of no concern. It is a concern. It just goes to show you that people are very unhappy on your products and your services. And I think that eventually it's going to catch up to them. What they are relying on are people that are not really reading up on the internet or looking into this deeply. Those are the people that they are counting on sticking with them, essentially. So, anyway, guys, drop a comment below. Fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Gun in hand, we are alone again. No, I'm not the one from night to moon.